guys, welcome back to the channel. Today, we are going to be talking all things the Tortured Poets department. Listen, ever since this album came out, I have been needing, craving, just to sit down with you guys and deep dive into all of it. I have so many thoughts, I have so many opinions. This album is really one that you just need to sit down and put it all out there. I want to talk about the lore of the album, what my favorites are. I want to show you some of the reactions that me and my friends had when we first listened to some of these songs. I want to go through every single last drop of this album with you. So that is what we are going to do today. To show you how serious this is, I literally have a document on my computer that is 3 pages long, detailing everything that I want to talk about in this video. And I also have an extra SD card for when this SD card runs out of storage, because we got a lot to talk about, okay? This is how you know it's serious. But if you are new, hi, my name is Alexis. I am 24 years old and I love me some Taylor Swift, if that wasn't apparent enough. And I also make Swiftie content on Instagram and TikTok. Both of those will be on the screen and linked down below if you want some more Swiftie content. I got you. And before we get into talking about the Tortured Poets department, I wanted to take a minute to thank today's sponsor, which is BetterHelp. You guys have heard me talk about BetterHelp before. I love BetterHelp so much. BetterHelp is an online therapy platform that makes starting therapy a lot easier and much more accessible. I actually used BetterHelp in 2022 when I was having a really hard time with my anxiety. I struggled a lot with panic attacks and anxiety attacks at the time, and BetterHelp was amazing. Finding a therapist on BetterHelp helped me connect with somebody that understood what I was going through and knew exactly how to help, which was great. BetterHelp lets you have therapy sessions over the phone, over video, and even messaging, whatever's the most comfortable version of therapy for you. BetterHelp also has over 30,000 therapists to choose from. They are automatically matched with you depending on your needs, but if you don't vibe with your therapist, you can switch therapists with a touch of a button in your settings at no additional cost. In most cases, you're assigned to a therapist within the first 48 hours and then you're ready to go. And then you can just schedule your appointments at any time that's most convenient for you. You can join over 4 million people who use BetterHelp to start living a healthier and happier life. You can click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/Alexis. Clicking that link helps this channel, and it also gets you 10% off your first month at BetterHelp, so you can connect with a therapist and see if it's a good fit for you. I will have the link at the very top of the description and on the screen. Huge thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this portion of the video. Now let's get into the Tortured Poets department. We got a lot to uncover. Listen, I think it's only fitting to start out this Tortured Poets TED Talk out by going step by step through the album booklet. The album booklet is so arguably important to the storyline and theme of this album. If you have a physical version of the album, please do yourself a favor, if you haven't already, go through the physical album booklet page by page, because it will give you such an insight that you don't get by just going through the track list, and it is arguably needed for this album, okay? So that's where we're gonna start. When you open up the physical album, this is the vinyl, same with CDs. When you open it, you first see a poem written by Stevie Nicks. Excuse me? This poem basically summarizes the entire track list and album contents at face value, which is important. And this poem pretty much summed up my first impressions of the album when listening to it at midnight before I even read Taylor's epilogue, which there's an epilogue in this album. Her first epilogue ever, okay, in her entire album catalog, and it is the most important thing to this album, okay? We will get to it. I'm not gonna read the entire Stevie Nicks poem to you, but definitely Google it. If you don't have the physical album, read it. It's very, very good, very, very important. But this prologue or poem basically tells me that this album is about 2 people who fell in love, maybe fell back into love, but he's a tragedy, he might be a mess, not stable enough for her, so they split up. That is basically what I got without knowing any of the lore, any of the media stuff. That is basically what you get, what storyline you get from going through song by song in the album. Something I find very, very important is one line that Stevie writes in this poem. It is the line, "Don't ask questions, do that later." And by later, she really really means when you read the epilogue, okay? Which we will get to, like I said. But the fact that this album has an epilogue, that fact alone is one of the reasons why I think this album is the most interesting and brilliant album that she has ever put together, okay? After you read the Stevie Nicks poem, you go straight into Fortnight. Now let's talk about the contents of this album. Fortnight is the album opener. I have grown to really, really adore this song. I think it is sonically and just musically such a great opener for the entire album. And the fact that the opening line is "I was supposed to be sent away" is such a great thematic statement for this entire album, I think. So Fortnight as an album opener is genius to me. I think she really knew what she was doing. And obviously people have been looking forward to a Taylor and Post Malone collab for a very long time, arguably since they hugged at the AMAs in 2019. So this was just a great start to the album, and I think it was a very good album opener. However, sometimes I do think about a world where "How Did It End" is the album opener. Imagine that. Imagine the Tortured Poets department starting off with "Come One, Come All, It's Happening Again." That would just be so good. But I trust Taylor. Fortnight was a great album opener, and I know some people had their opinions when it first came out about if Post Malone got enough time on the song, but I honestly think that Post Malone having the outro, so good, so good. I completely trust the creative process on the song because it really executed what it needed to, I think. And then after Fortnight, we move in to the rest of the track list. I always compare Tracklist to the 1989 track list because the 1989 track list is arguably an entire storyline. She starts off with "Welcome to New York," goes all the way through a relationship from when it starts, from when it ends, and then ends with "Clean," being gone of the relationship, clean of the relationship. It's just a really good storyline that you see play out song by song. Comparing that to the order of the track list on Tortured Poets department, very different, okay? Very different. We go from songs like "The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived" to "The Alchemy," okay? Or the Tortured Poets department to "My Boy Only Breaks His Favorite Toys." Very vastly different song, ends of the spectrum, different emotions that you're getting pulled towards while going through the track list, which I would arguably say that bouncing from one end of the spectrum to the other side of the emotional spectrum is the point. It's almost like a manic phase, which we will get to in the epilogue, okay? So brilliant, 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 brilliant. Also, I would like to preface, obviously, I'm a Taylor Swift fan, okay? This is, I would say, a not biased review, but let's be honest. I'm a huge Taylor Swift fan. I have loved her since her beginning. So obviously, I'm going to know the points of why she's making these decisions. I'm going to see, obviously, the beauty of these decisions. And so my opinion will obviously be skewed. So if that's not your cup of tea, I will let you leave right now. Anywho, moving on to some of my favorites on the track list. I did post a rankings video over on my TikTok and Instagram Reels. I don't even know if I agree with myself and what rankings I chose because honestly, this album is so deep and content heavy that I will need a lot of time with some of these songs before I actually make an educated rankings, okay? But I did make a soft launch of my favorites and some of my least favorites, and that is over on my TikTok if you want to see that. But one of my favorites is "My Boy Only Breaks His Favorite Toys." This metaphor is absolutely insane. Insane. I think the standard feeling of reminiscing on a relationship after it's ended and being like, wow, I really wish he would have just kept his energy up from when he first saw me to how it ended. Or, wow, he was really into it at first and now he's just throwing me to the side. I think that standard feeling is so universal and relatable that putting it into the form of a metaphor of you only break your favorite toys, like a kid going to freaking Toys R Us and getting a new toy and then playing with it for 25 minutes and then throwing it to the side. Like that metaphor is so brilliant and well executed. It is insane. I literally wrote in my notes, this is insanity, okay? And it's also an imagery that we can all visually see and relate to. Like we've all seen a kid be obsessed with a toy, and then throw it to the side 2 months later. So this song is top of my rankings for that very reason, and sonically it is amazing, and I love this song. Definitely a highlight. Another one of my highlights from this album is Who's Afraid of Little Old Me. I love this song. I think I even have some clips of when we reacted to it in real time the first time we heard it, and the scream that she does, oh, I remember being so floored. We were all freaking out. The scream almost reminds me of what she does in the chorus for The Black Dog when she says, "Old habits die screaming." It scratches an itch in my brain that is like, I am so obsessed with those little moments in some of these songs, and Who's Afraid of Little Me is the same way. Like, I love that chorus, the way that she's like singing. It's so good. It's so good. And I also love how on TikTok people are kind of relating it to their own life, of like people saying like, I'm a recovering people pleaser, and this song relates to it so much, of like the moment that you break out of that people pleasing habit and cycle, you're like, all right, I did it. Who's afraid of little old me, huh? I just think it is so brilliant. So I love this one. And then one of my top favorites off this album is But Daddy, I Love Him. Honestly, this song brought me back to such a OG Taylor Swift era, if that makes sense. Like, I heard it and it immediately brought me back to something I would hear off of like Fearless or Debut. Like, not sonically, but just the way that she's singing and the way that the song is structured. It just brought me back to that time, and it hit a spot in my heart, okay? And I also love the breaking the fourth wall moment. I'll show you another clip of when me and my friends heard the "I'm having his baby, just kidding" moment, because it was such a moment. She really got us good. She really did. And I love how she's on TikTok liking all of these reaction videos to everyone reacting to that breaking the fourth wall moment, because it's brilliant. Another song that I wanted to talk about is the album Closer, on the standard edition at least. It is Clara Bow. Clara Bow. This is easily another one of my favorites from the album. This song kind of broke all expectations that I had for this song. Hearing the song title, I really thought it was going to play on kind of like the Last Great American Dynasty vibe of like, oh, Clara Bow, this is how she relates to my life. But it was not like that at all. I just love how she was comparing when a new woman rises in stardom. People always are like, oh, you're the next so-and-so, or oh my gosh, you're just like so-and-so. And it kind of gives them pressure, I could imagine. And then also, I mean, we already compare ourselves enough to each other. I don't think it's really necessary to compare, oh, you're the next Stevie Nicks, or, you know, you're the next Taylor Swift. And also, when she said her name in this song, I'll show you the reaction video of this too, because we were all sobbing. Like, it was such a crazy out-of-body experience when we read the lyrics off of my friend's phone, and I saw that she was about to say her own name, and then when she said, it was just such like, I don't know, when you've been a fan for so long, it just hits different. Like, it's just like when you're a fan, you understand like the weight of like what she's saying. And I mean, it's true. Like, I feel like when Olivia Rodrigo really hit stardom, everyone was like, you're the next Taylor Swift. And I think Taylor's just really honing into the idea of like, you know, it's not the best thing to say. We already compare ourselves enough to each other, you know? I also think that the fact that she talks so highly about Clara Bow and Stevie Nicks when they're mentioned in the song, and then when she's mentioned, she says, oh, you got edge, she never did. And it's just such a self-deprecating line, but it's so beautiful in the song. And so this is a huge album highlight for me. I love this song. I literally, as I'm filming this, just got a text from my husband, who is at our little indie record store right now, and they were sold out of the Bolter variant and the Albatross variant when I went on the day I got back from my release weekend trip. And so I wasn't able to get those variants, but they are in stock, and my husband's getting them for me right now. Anyway, just thought I'd add that. Anyway, what were we talking about? I would say that Clara Bow is a genius album closer. However, on basically every CD copy that you get with the standard cover, there's a bonus track. And that bonus track is the manuscript. And at the end of the double album, when you put them all together, the manuscript is also the album closer. So I would just like to say that the fact that it ends with the manuscript is genius, And that is like even more so above the fact that the very last line is, but the story isn't mine anymore. Like I could really take this entire video and talk about just the manuscript alone, but I will spare you. When I heard this song, it really immediately struck me as like a you're on your own kid take to looking back at your past relationships or maybe a singular relationship. And I just think that that is so beautiful. And putting that song at the end matched with what her Instagram caption for this album was. Let me get it. I'll read it to you. All right, so in her Instagram caption, she writes, "This period of the author's life is now over. The chapter closed and boarded up." And then follows it with, "Once we have spoken our saddest story, we can be free of it." I feel like that caption and what she said about the album matched with the last line of the manuscript, and the fact that the manuscript is the last song on the album is such a meaningful thing to take note of. I know we're all talking about the lore of this album and all of the deep little things that we saw on the media about when this album was written. I think it is really important just to see how Taylor feels about this album being like a chapter closer. I think it provides more meaning to the album and also more context to the album. And I just think that it's brilliant. What can I say? It's brilliant. All right, now that we have talked about the album closers, we are now at the end of the album. And like I said before, at the end of the album, there's an epilogue, And here she is in all of her glory. Her pen was really writing here. She really didn't stop. And now I'm going to read you the entire epilogue and annotate it with you here like I am an AP Lang circa 2017. Okay? In all seriousness, when you flip to the end of the album booklet, there's a summary poem written by Taylor Swift. This is something that you don't get on streaming when you're streaming the album on Apple Music or Spotify, but it is single-handedly the most important aspect to this album. So I'm going to read it here for you. I definitely recommend reading it on your own because I'm going to be stopping here and there to point out some things. So definitely read it on your own if you haven't already, but I will read it to you. It starts out by saying, "In summation, at this hearing, I stand before my fellow members of the Tortured Poets Department with a summary of my findings. A debrief, a detailed rewinding for the purpose of warning, for the sake of reminding. As you might all unfortunately recall, I had been struck with a case of restricted humanity, which explains my plea here today of temporary insanity." Are you joking with me right now? I digress and move on. "You see, the pendulum swings, oh the chaos it brings, leads the caged beast to do the most curious things. Lovers spend years denying what's ill-fated, resentment rotting away galaxies we created, stars placed and glued meticulously by hand next to the ceiling fan. Tried wishing on comets, tried dimming the shine, tried to orbit his planet, some stars never align." So I want to make a point here. At the beginning of this summary, she's talking about the entire album as a whole, or this entire period of time as a whole, and then dives into talking about an ex-lover before she met the current one that this album might be about. However, continuing, she says, "And in one conversation I tore down the whole sky. Spring sprung forth with dazzling freedom hues, then a crash from the skylight bursting through, something old. Someone hollowed who told me he could be brand new. And so I was out of the oven and into the microwave, out of the slammer and into a tidal wave. How gallant to save the empress from her gilded tower. Swinging a sword he could barely lift, but loneliness struck at that fateful hour. Low-hanging fruit on his wine-stained lips. He never even scratched the surface of me. None of them did." None of them did! None. 0, because men are trash. Trash. This is probably another very, very important part. She says, in summation, it was not a love affair. I screamed while bringing my fist to my coffee ring desk. It was a mutual manic phase. It was self-harm. It was house and then cardiac arrest. Like I said earlier, the fact that the track list is very pulling you to opposite ends of this emotional spectrum, almost like when you're going through a manic phase of being really, really high one day and really, really low the next. And she says it right here. A smirk creeps onto this poet's face because it's the worst men that I write best. She ends it with, and so I enter into evidence my tarnished coat of arms, my muses acquired like bruises, a talisman and charms, the tick 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 of love bombs, my veins of pitch black ink, all's fair in love and poetry. Are you joking? I want to read you a tweet that I found the morning after we listened to the album at midnight, because I think it is so good at putting this into words. This person says, her acting like she's on trial and we're the judges and claiming temporary insanity for the whole situation. I am crying. She really was like, well, that happened. None of you liked it, but I was going through a manic phase. Let's move on. I think that is a really good summation of this album, and the fact that she decided to do an epilogue instead of writing her own prologue. She wanted us to go through the entire album thinking like how the prologue poem says. These people were in love. They fell back into love possibly. He was a train wreck. He left. Maybe he ghosted her. She's heartbroken. She wanted us to go through that entire album with that mindset to then read the epilogue and be like, okay, this is the case. We were just given the court case, and now she's trying to claim temporary insanity so she's not guilty. And I think that fact alone is absolutely genius and why I love this album so much. And here we are, almost at the end of the video, and the SD card is full. We're now on to the next. I apologize if the framing changed while I was switching out my SD card, but we're almost done, I promise. I do have my own little summary to wrap all of my thoughts together. So, in summation, I know everyone keeps talking about the deep lore of this album and how interesting the timelines were and how everyone was super shocked about who this album may or may not be about. But honestly, the theme of this album is so much more than that. The way that she articulated the storyline of this album, regardless if we saw it play out in real time through the media, it is so clear and brilliant and mysterious all at the same time, which I think is the point. Every single person has most likely at one point or another been in a relationship that has felt so right and so good in the moment and had outside people weigh in of, oh, that's not right, or oh my gosh, run for the hills, and you're in it, so you're like, no, I love him, this is good, this is right, you guys are stupid. And then when you get out of the relationship, you're like, oh, yeah, you guys were right. Taking Taylor's experience out of it, which is what we should do because these songs are now ours. This album is so unbelievably relatable. And as of right now, as you are watching this album, I think has definitely taken a top 3 album slot of all time for me, because not only are the contents of this album amazing, I have so many of my new favorite songs on this album, but the picture that she painted is so amazing, and the fact that you can't even see the full picture unless you look for the real picture is so genius. Like having an epilogue and a poem not written from her in the physical album booklet that you would not get if you're streaming, but it adds so much to the story, is just so genius. And this album, the concept, the contents was so beautifully executed, and that's my final thoughts on that. Oh my gosh, 2 SD cards later. I've been filming for 2 hours. We have finally reached the end, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching this. I probably forgot so many things that I wanted to say. I could sit here and talk about this album for many hours on end. Please let me know your thoughts on the album, what your guys' favorite songs are, your immediate thoughts. Let me know down below below in the comments. I will definitely be responding to all of you guys so we can talk more. And if you guys want to go ahead and follow me on Instagram and Twitter for more Swiftie content, definitely more Tortured Poets content, those will be on the screen and linked down below for you. But I love you guys so much. Thank you for making it through this very long video. If you did make it to this point in the video, please put a white heart in the comments so I know who you are, because you're a trooper. And let me know what other Tortured Poets themed videos you guys would like to see. The Eras tour starts soon. I'm so excited to see what she has in store. But until then, I will talk to you guys in my next video. Bye!